We are now in lesson 17, specifically 17B, titled The Right Approach to Data. Hang in there, keep going through this semester. We are almost done. Quantitative writing assignments are meant to communicate analyses and interpretations of quantitative data, often to make an argument or support a particular perspective. Numbers are used in a variety of ways to define a problem, to see alternative points of view, to speculate about causes and effects, and to create evidence-based arguments. In previous math classes, you were probably assigned word problems that were really well structured. All the necessary information was provided to find that one correct answer. In contrast, a quantitative writing assignment involves formulating a claim or a conclusion with supporting reasons and evidence. And I'd like to point out they included a left-handed person, of which I am left-handed also in this lesson. But I digress. We go to question 1. In the previous assignment, you wrote a paragraph and then assessed yourself with a rubric. What part of the rubric requirements were the most difficult to include in your paragraph? So here's the rubric. And as you look at the rubric, just a quick comment about the rubric. Oh, this is mine that I have to write on. I'll just point out that there are 5 different parts. And on the 5 different parts, the 4 is what you want. So you would want to be able to write mathematical evidence and conclusions are correct and clearly communicated to a general audience. Next, in this one, paragraph contains a complete comparison contrast of 2 halves of the chart. Paragraph contains a complete justification for mathematical conclusions and has no opinions. Paragraph has a logical flow with an introduction, a body, and conclusion, or at least a logical flow. And then paragraph is neatly prepared with correct spelling and grammar. So this is where you need to hit pause and you need to write down your comments on how did that go for you on your writing assignment. So the objectives of this lesson is that we will understand the components of effective quantitative writing. We will understand that writing about data in an organized and a concise way can convey information and logical conclusions effectively. We'll be able to identify necessary calculations to perform on data and incorporate resulting quantitative information into our summary or our analysis. And we'll be able to write a brief analysis of data presented in table text or graphical form, and we're going to focus on key patterns, essential information, and logical conclusions. We've seen the power of a picture in helping us determine or understand data. In this lesson, we add writing to our list of tools that we use to convey information. Writing is more than just listing facts or writing a couple of sentences. Powerful writing, and that should be our goal. Powerful writing is analytical, writing that digs into the data and presents the reader with key patterns and crucial information. So the first step in writing about data is looking at the data and pulling out several key ideas. I call it making it mathematical. We're going to have some steps. Like, number 1, we can pull out key ideas. Read each paragraph about the graph you reviewed in Preview 17B and use the rubric to help you critique each of the paragraphs. And so when we're writing, we do look at several key ideas, and we can look at how can we compare and how can we contrast. And then how can we put out some ideas that are, as it said on the last page, to be able to pull out several, powerful writing. It digs into the data and presents the reader with key patterns. So not just quoting what you see, but looking for patterns like the women are have twice the amount of men, or the population one decade is 1/10 of the decade of another, or combining different pieces to show, wow, this is over half the data. So it is digging in there and looking at the information. So more than just the superficial of what you see, the numbers, and more than just comparing and contrasting, but digging and then reporting out without opinion. So what they're asking us to do here is to critique each paragraph. We have some comments and paragraphs about, let's see if I can find this. And so you will recall that we have the male information, female information, we have years, we have the ages, we have the population, like down here in the 0 to 4, it's almost 10,000, and over here looks like it's a little bit more than 10,000. And so this is what these people are going to be, they've written about, and we're going to need to critique their information based on the rubric. And so keep in mind, we have 1 through 4 on all of these. A perfect score would be all 4s, so 4 times 5, 20. A very, very low score would be 1 times 5 of 5. So it's between 5 and 20. And where was I? So we're here. And I'll read through these, and then you need to already stop and read and jot down some ideas, because it's going the other way of, instead of just asking you to write right now, it's saying, well, let's analyze what some other people have done and see if we like it or if we see flaws that we need to avoid. So starting with number 2, it has a person who has written the following. People are getting older in the United States, especially women. We can see this in the graph because it shows that the ages are going up and up all the time. Maybe this is because of better medicine or money that people have. Well, first off, this is opinion. And so we're going to go ahead and cross that out. And I don't see any numbers. Maybe some comparing and contrasting because it's talking about getting older. And then we can see that the ages are going up and up, but what is that really trying to convey to us? Is it very well communicated? And so if we do go back and look at this graph, it says the ages are going up and up all the time. Well, it looks like the ages are going up and up, but then what happens here? Do we say they're going down and down? And did they tell us what year this is or what ages that this is making a change? So much more information that could be conveyed that's not being conveyed. So you make a decision on a score, you make a decision on what's missing or what you might like about it. Some things you might include in what you write down is that there is no quantitative information in this paragraph. The information given is actually incorrect. The graph does not represent change over time. It also the answer should stand alone and not depending on whether the reader has access to the original graph. We had to go look at the graph and see what up and up meant. In addition, there is speculation in the paragraph that's not relative to the analysis. We have to leave our opinions out of what we're writing, just the facts, just a report, just observation. So now let's look at question 3. I would read it, write some thoughts, but it says, I see that the boys outnumber the girls most of the time here until the people get older, and then it switches. That'd be a really good place to tell us where. This tells me that women live longer than men. And there are a lot of people, too, who are 50 to 54 years old. That's the other interesting thing about this graph. Basically, the graph shows that people keep dying, and so the population is pretty small and when we get to the older people. Well, it's better than number 2, but this paragraph does include some quantitative information, but it's not consistent. It's certainly not clear. The writer describes the basic patterns in terms of larger and smaller, but it doesn't put it in context, and it gives very little quantitative information. It is difficult to understand the importance of what's an increase and what's a decrease, and what do you mean, and who cares? The writing is casual, it's ambiguous. Like if somebody has pronouns and says it, well, what is it? Help us out here. And there are some misspellings and other grammatical errors that detract from the message, from anything that the writer's trying to say. So number 3 is better than question number 2, but how much better? What score would you give it? Would you give number 2 a score of 5? Would you give number 3 a score of 8, 9, or 10, if that much? I don't know. Notice what you like, what should be improved, and then let's look on at number 4. This one is just awesome. The graph that I was looking at showed that the population in the US is huge. Looks like there are 10 million girls aged 0 to 4 and about 10.5 million boys. Then there is a smaller number of girls in the next age group. What's the next age group? And also for boys. Then it gets a bit bigger. What does bit mean? For both until age 20 to 24 and around 23 millennial, till it goes down a bit again. Again, how much is a bit? What are they trying to say? Interesting. I guess that's what they're trying to say. At age 40 to 44, it increases to about 20 million and it keeps increasing. How much does it increase? To the 40 to 50 to 54-year-olds, which is about 24 million question mark. Then it goes down for the rest so that by the time we get to 90 to 95, it's only about 1 million, and I can't even figure out the 100 plus part since it's so small. Wow. So quantitatively, this paragraph beats the other two in terms of giving us numbers, analysis, pulling out information. And it does begin with a clear statement talking about age and focuses on several key pieces of the graph, but it does not address everything in the graph. But that is fine. The paragraph incorporates some common knowledge about the baby boomers and puts this into historical context. It's not as quantitative as it could be, but it does include a good interpretation of some of the key information in this graph. However, the language is very, very casual. It's almost conversational, and there are several spelling and grammatical errors. And this is a good first draft, but now the writer needs to polish it. So now we're at question 5. It looks bigger. Bigger doesn't always mean better, but here we go with question 5. Same graph. We're looking at the same information. Excuse me. The United States may be a young country, but its population is not so young. Data from the United States Census Bureau show that the largest age group in the United States in 2014 is the group of people aged 50 to 54. Looks pretty good so far. This group consists of about 23 million people. The next largest group is the people aged 20 to 24. This group is almost the same size as the 50 to 50-year-old group. It's also interesting that the United States population is fairly evenly distributed among the age groups from 0 to 59. There's a sharp decline at age 60, and the next sets of age groups drop in size by several million at each step. That's very nice. I mean, not that they're dropping, but very nice at how it was written and seamlessly written. If we think of this historically, the distribution makes sense. The group of people aged 50 to 54 and the group just past them, the 54 to 59, represent the baby boom, which was a huge population growth in the United States after World War II. The other large group is called the baby boomlet, and it represents the children of the baby boomers. It will be interesting to see if another bump in population occurs as the children of the baby boomers have their own children. Definitely take a minute to write down your thoughts, circle, highlight, underline what you like. And some of the things you might want to write about number 5 is that this paragraph is the best of the group. It could have been clearer, it could have had a clearer thesis statement, but it does give a good overall picture of the age distribution in the United States. The paragraph puts the information in context, it uses some history, it adds an interesting question at the end that could lead to further research. It's well written, grammatically correct, includes appropriate quantitative information from the graph. So very nice, but then looking at question 6. Reflect on quantitative writing and the grading rubric and what is different about this type of writing. I'm not going to provide any answers on question 6 because it really is your opinion on what do you think about this? Can this help you in your other classes? You probably have never seen this in a math class. And what do you think about this quantitative writing? And can we put some mathematical process on it? And how much is too much and how much is too little? And how can you organize it? And just overall, what do you think about it? I'll meet you back at question 7. So now moving on to question number 7. An important step in writing about data is to look at the data and identify several key ideas. We practiced this skill in the preview assignment, and let's return to the Census Bureau website. The link that's listed here is broken. You'll see at the top of the page I have highlighted the link to use. I just typed it in, went to this link, and then it says read each paragraph about what you reviewed in 17B and use the, nope, I'm on the wrong one. To generate another population pyramid graph, this time select Afghanistan. And so I've gone to this site, I've made sure I've clicked Afghanistan, I've clicked the year 2014, and then when I went to the drop down, I had multiple choices, but I went down here to the population pyramid graph, and then I have to scroll down and click Submit. After I click Submit, then I get the graph like the one we had for the United States, but this time for Afghanistan. Part A says make 3 quantitative observations about the population distribution for the United States and for Afghanistan. Then Part B says write a short analysis of the information in both of these graphs, comparing the population distribution in Afghanistan with the population distribution in the United States. Be sure that your paragraph includes the components outlined in the grading rubric. So this is just a great time for you to sit, to reflect, to think, to be creative in your writing. They're asking us to compare and contrast. Here's the one for the United States. I'll remove my markings from there if they'll come off. And so you notice the markings, you notice where we've started, where we end up. And then as we go over here and look at the one for Afghanistan, I would still make this as mathematical as I can because it's very helpful for me to go ahead and organize. And maybe organize by male, female, age group, but you do need to report out what do you notice about the age group 0 to 4 for males, and it's just over 2.4 million. And then look at the females, it's just over, but maybe a little less than the males. And then start to notice as the age groups increase, whereas we had several million in the American 90 to 94-year-olds, it really dwindles and dwindles fast the further or the higher we get. It's fairly strong down here at the bottom at the younger ages, but then it does, and it looks very similar, symmetrical on both sides, the male and the female side. So there's so many things that you can say. I will comment on a few. Something you could say is that the population of Afghanistan is predominantly young, and it is skewed toward the younger age groups. And in fact, the population ages 0 to 19 makes up more than half of the total population. But the United States population is fairly evenly distributed for the 0 to 64 range. It's fairly thick, with 6 to 7% of the total population in each of the groups. The population in Afghanistan also shows a dramatic drop from ages from age group 0 to 4 to age group 5 to 9. That's pretty dramatic. There's another dramatic drop from 15 to 19 to 20 to 24, and in contrast, the United States population in the younger age group is much smaller, and then there's a jump in the population size from the 15 to 19-year-old group and to the 20 to 24-year-old group. Also, the United States population includes a significant percentage of people aged 70 and older, about 20% of the population. Whereas, if you look at, and my Lone Star is ready to expire on me, if you look at the Afghanistan population, it's very small in the ages 70 and older and makes up less than 3% of the population. So I don't expect you to write a documentary, but I expect you to start to develop patterns on, I would talk about males, then females, then I would talk about each age group, comparing both, or at least writing down both, then comparing both, and then looking for patterns, looking for trends, digging deeper where they were saying, you know, from this group above or this group below, or there were increases, there were drops, is it symmetrical, what's going on? Finally, Part B says write a short analysis of the information. Compare the population with Afghanistan and the population in the United States, and be sure that the paragraph does include the components outlined in our rubric, where it does have a logical flow. It is incorporating good amounts of quantitative information, good comparisons, good contrast, good observations of digging deeper where if we looked at a certain chunk of information, how does it compare to another chunk? Here are some thoughts that you could write down, pieces and parts or all of on Part B. Definitely hit pause right now. Definitely write down several sentences of ideas on your own, and then come back and we can walk through some of the parts on B. An opening sentence might be Afghanistan and the United States are very different countries in many ways. And a look at the population distribution from the United States Census Bureau shows this very clearly. Afghanistan is a younger country in terms of population and a smaller country than the United States. The population of Afghanistan in 2014 is about 6 million people. The United States population is over 300 million people, or about 50 times larger in terms of population. See how they dug deeper and made a comment? The age distributions of populations are very different also. In Afghanistan, over 50% of the population is younger than 20 years. In comparison, the population of the United States is fairly evenly distributed until the age of 65, when it finally starts to drop. Even at the older ages, there are big differences. And in the United States, more than 20% of the population is aged 70 or above. But in Afghanistan, this is only about 3% of the population. Further research would be needed, that's always nice to throw in, to confirm the reasons for the different population distributions, but certainly the history of war in Afghanistan must be a factor in the lower population rates of ages 20 and above. Again, take this time to think, to process, to ponder, to practice. How would you write and write academically to describe the information presented to you in graphs? This does end our lesson 17B. Look at your syllabus to see if you have more lessons. So keep going or stop based on what you notice in your syllabus.